In this video, I'm sharing 3 things I learned from the book How to Win at the Sport of Business by Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is well known. He's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. He's a star of the show Shark Tank. And this is a book that shares kind of his blog posts, his thoughts on things like entrepreneurship. The first lesson that I learned was to understand the path of least resistance. He quotes Aaron Spelling in the book as saying that TV is the path of least resistance from boredom. What that means is that it's easier for someone to sit there and to watch TV than it is to sit there and do nothing at all. And once you understand that, you understand the key to good business decision making. He gives the example of Amazon. What makes Amazon successful? Well, is that they've mastered the path to least resistance. They save your payment information, they offer fast shipping, they offer one-click ordering. You can pull up something, see that you like it, and buy it with one click. Now you might go to a competitor's website and you might find a product for cheaper, but what happens? You'll sit down, you're like, oh, here's what I want. It's, $5 or $6 cheaper, let me go ahead and order it. You go to the checkout page and it's, do you want to create an account or sign up as a guest? And you're like, okay, let me sign up as a guest. You go to sign up as a guest, try to check out, and then what happens? Oh, apparently you made an account with this website 3 years ago and forgot about it. Now you have to use that account to check out. And well, guess what? You forgot your password. Now you've got to go back and reset your password. You reset the password, turns out your credit card information is out of date. All these steps add up and you reach a point where like, you know what? It's not worth saving the $5. You close it out, you go back to Amazon, you hit the buy with one click, and then you order the item. That's the path of least resistance. That's what gives people an advantage over other people. Google's website is the most valuable real estate online, the Google homepage. They could monetize that for an insane amount of money, but they don't, because their product is the search engine. What they want people to do is to come and to search for stuff from their website. And so their homepage is set up as the path of least resistance to searching. You pull up the site, you search, and you go. There's nothing else for you to do there. To have a successful product, you have to understand this philosophy. Your product has to be easy to understand. It has to be easy to use. It has to be easy for people to get what it does. If you look at Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, there's a lot of products that come through where the product is really good. The product is great. But people won't invest in it because they'll say the potential with this product is not so high because it requires too much consumer education. This product only works if someone's actually over there physically demonstrating it. And although that might be worth it, but as an investment, it's not worth it because they know it won't scale at the level that they want it to scale because it's not easy to use and easy to understand. By the same token, you have to make sure that your stuff is easy to buy. It's easy for people to acquire. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else where it's easier to do. Now, this concept of the path of least resistance, it's not just sales and businesses and products, but think about when you're networking or you're, emailing people, trying to get things done. Think about situations at work where, let's say you want to meet up with somebody and you're trying to meet with someone who's higher than you, so, maybe your manager or something like that, someone who's busier than you are. How do you set up that meeting? Do you just email them and say, hey, are you free to get coffee? Let me know what's a good time for you to meet. What you're doing in that situation is you're putting the onus of work on the other individual. There's not a path, that's a very difficult path of resistance for them to go through. Like, oh man, I gotta sit down, I gotta look at my calendar, I gotta figure out what is this person you want to talk about, how long is it gonna take, and all those questions add up and it moves us into a state of not acting. But if you were to turn around and say, hey, I'd really like to speak with you about X topic. Here's some of the questions that I had about it. I'd love to grab a cup of coffee with you. Here's the address of a coffee shop that's 1 mile away from work. Would you be free at 3 o'clock on Tuesday? If not, let me know a better time that works for you and I'll work around your schedule. Now there's a path of least resistance. They can look at it. They know exactly what's going on. They know the location's close to them. You're trying to eliminate as many inconveniences as possible. In the best case scenario is they can reply and they can simply say yes and be done with it. And if the answer is no, you've structured it in such a way that they know what to say and how to say it. So there's not a lot of thought process involved on their side. Think about something like where maybe you need to go to someone for advice or input or feedback. It's one thing to say, hey, here's a bunch of issues that I'm having. I kind of don't know what to do with it. I'd like to pick your brain. When you say something like, I want to pick your brain, or I'd like to just sit down and get your feedback, that person is thinking, oh man, I've got to sit down and figure out this whole thing for this person. And it's going to be very hard to get that meeting. On the other hand, if you adopt this idea of the path of least resistance, you might email that person and say, hey, I know that you're really well versed in this particular subject or this particular thing. Here's where I'm struggling. Here's a list of all the things that I've done. I tried looking this up. I went to this person for help. I searched this. I went through this other, article. Here's all the steps that I've gone through. Here's the roadblock that I've reached. This is where I'm stuck. This is where I need your input as to how to get around this roadblock. Would you have some time to sit down and talk with me and help me figure that out? Now you're giving them something that's much more structured, much more defined, much easier for them to process, and much easier for them to reply to. The second lesson I learned was the importance of sales. And that sounds very simplistic. It's just, yeah, of course we need sales. Mark Cuban says that you have to get a well-rounded business education. You need to know marketing. You need to know finance. You need to know all these different subjects, but you also need to be able to master sales. Sales is valuable no matter what kind of organization you go into, because the ability to understand what a customer wants and to be able to articulate that back, that's a very valuable skill, because you can show that we understand what the customer wants and how we're able to deliver on what it is that they're looking for. So that value of sales is universal. And there's a couple of things that mastering sales that Cuban points out. The first is empathy. And this is, again, it's a buzzword, it's something that's thrown around a lot, but at the core of sales really is empathy. Can you put yourself in the customer's shoes and understand what are the problems that they're facing, what are their burning pains, what are the things that they're really looking for a solution to, and can you actually provide that solution? If you can do that, the sales take care of themselves. We always hear that phrase that a good product sells itself. Well, a good product only becomes a good product if you're able to empathize and put yourself in the shoes of your customer and see what it is that they actually need and what they're looking for and why. And when you do that, you master sales. Another aspect of sales is learning when to take no for an answer. And that's counterintuitive for salesmen. Because we often think of sales or a good salesperson as someone that's pushy, that's persistent, that stays after it until they get the sale. And Cuban says that that's not always the best way. He says that's actually a very lazy way of making sales, is just to be persistent and pushy, because that's easy. Anyone can be persistent, anyone can be pushy. What's harder is that route of empathy. It's that route of understanding what do my customers need, and more importantly, who my customers are. And if I've got something that's of value, I need to do the homework of finding qualified prospects. Where are the people looking for what I have so that I can go and deliver it to them? That makes the job of the sales itself easier, but there's just a lot more homework involved in getting to that point. The third lesson I learned from Mark Cuban's book was be the best at what you do. Again, one of those cliche advices, but it's once you find what it is that you want to pursue, or your calling, or whatever it is that you're trying to go down, he says become world class, become the best in the world at your niche. And the way that you measure that, there's two ways. One is the trap. One is the self-deception trap. Don't let yourself be the judge of how good you are at something, but rather let the market look at it. How in demand are your services? The best want to work with the best. And the better that you get, the more demand that there will be for what you're doing, for your service or your product, and the higher caliber and quality of people that will be asking for it. So use that as your metric. Keep working and get good at what you do. Become the best at what you do. That's 3 things I learned from the book How to Win at the Sport of Business by Mark Cuban. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. Got another video coming at you next week.